Small actions, big results. Most people believe that success comes from big moments, major decisions, sudden breakthroughs, or one life-changing opportunity. They think everything will change when they finally make a bold move or find the perfect strategy. But the truth is, that's not how real progress usually happens. Real change is much quieter. It doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happens in small actions repeated over time. Think about your daily life, the things you do every day, how you spend your time, what you focus on, the habits you follow. These may seem small and insignificant in the moment. Skipping one study session doesn't feel like a big deal. Wasting 1 hour scrolling on your phone seems harmless. Choosing comfort over effort just once feels justified. But here's the reality. Those small choices don't stay small. They repeat, and what repeats grows. One small action turns into a habit turns into a pattern, and over time, that pattern becomes your lifestyle. This is how your future is built, not in one day, but daily. For example, reading just a few pages every day might not seem impressive, but over a year, it becomes dozens of books and a completely different level of knowledge. Exercising for a short time each day may feel minor, but over months and years, it transforms your health and energy. Saving a small amount of money regularly might feel slow, but over time, it builds financial stability and freedom. On the other hand, small negative actions work the same way. Delaying tasks becomes procrastination. Small distractions become lost hours. Minor bad habits turn into long-term problems. The danger is not in one bad decision, it's in repeating it. What makes this even more challenging is that the results of small actions are often invisible at the beginning. You don't see immediate progress, so it's easy to underestimate their value. You might feel like your efforts don't matter, or that nothing is changing. But something is always happening beneath the surface. Just like planting a seed, growth takes time before it becomes visible. For a while, it looks like nothing is happening. But with consistent care, it eventually grows into something much bigger. Your daily actions work the same way. What you do today might not change your life immediately, but it is shaping who you become. This is where most people go wrong. They focus too much on big results and not enough on small actions. They set large goals but ignore the daily habits required to achieve them. And when they don't see quick results, they lose motivation and stop. But the people who succeed understand something different. They don't rely on big moments. They rely on small, consistent actions. They focus on what they can do today, not what might happen someday. They understand that success is not about intensity, it's about consistency. You don't need to change everything overnight. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to take massive action all at once. You just need to start small and keep going. Because over time, small actions build momentum. Momentum builds progress, and progress builds results. And one day, what once felt like small, insignificant steps becomes the foundation of a completely different life. The compound effect of daily actions. At first glance, most daily actions don't seem very important. Reading a few pages, saving a small amount of money, practicing a skill for a short time, it all feels too small to make a real difference. Because of that, it's easy to underestimate the value of what you do each day. But this is where one of the most powerful principles comes in, the compound effect. The compound effect means that small actions, when repeated consistently over time, don't just add up, they multiply. The results grow slowly at first, almost invisibly, but as time goes on, they begin to accelerate. Small steps, repeated daily, create results far bigger than you expect. Think of it like this. If you improve just a little bit every day, those improvements don't stay small. Over weeks, months, and years, they stack on top of each other. For example, imagine you spend just 20 minutes a day learning a new skill. On a single day, it doesn't seem like much. Even after a week, the progress might feel minimal. But after a year, you've invested over 100 hours into that skill. That's the difference between being a beginner and becoming highly competent. The same applies to your finances. Saving a small amount regularly may not feel exciting, but with time, consistency, and growth, it turns into something significant. And it's not just about positive actions, negative actions compound too. Skipping small responsibilities, wasting time daily, or repeating unproductive habits may not seem harmful in the moment, but over time they accumulate into missed opportunities, lost potential, and frustration. The compound effect works in both directions. It can build you up or hold you back. What makes this principle difficult is that the results are not immediate. In the early stages, your efforts may feel pointless. You won't see dramatic changes right away. This is where many people give up. They expect quick results, and when they don't see them, they assume their actions don't matter. But the truth is, the most important changes are happening below the surface. Just like a plant grows roots before it becomes visible, your daily efforts are building a foundation. Then, at some point, something changes. The results that once felt invisible begin to show. Progress becomes noticeable. Growth becomes real. But by that time, it's not because of one big action. It's because of all the small actions that came before it. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Doing something small every day is far more powerful than doing something big once in a while. A single intense effort might feel productive, but without consistency, it doesn't last. It's not what you do occasionally that shapes your life, it's what you do consistently. When you understand the compound effect, your perspective begins to shift. You stop looking for quick wins and start focusing on daily progress. You begin to value small actions because you know they are building something bigger over time. You become more patient, more disciplined, and more intentional with your choices because you realize that every action, no matter how small, is contributing to your future. And over time, those small daily actions turn into powerful, life-changing results. Why small actions are hard to value. If small daily actions are so powerful, why do most people ignore them? Why is it so easy to skip the small habits that could improve your life and so hard to stay consistent with them? The answer lies in how our minds are wired. Humans naturally focus on immediate results. We are drawn to actions that give us quick rewards, things we can feel or see right away. That's why it's easy to spend time on entertainment, social media, or anything that gives instant satisfaction. But small positive actions don't work like that. When you study for an extra 30 minutes, you don't suddenly become smarter overnight. When you exercise once, your body doesn't transform instantly. When you save a small amount of money, you don't feel rich the next day. The benefits of small actions are delayed, and that makes them easy to ignore. At the same time, the cost of not taking action is also delayed. Skipping one study session doesn't seem harmful. Wasting 1 hour doesn't feel serious. Making one poor choice doesn't appear to have consequences. But just like positive actions compound, negative ones do too. The problem is, both the rewards and the consequences are invisible in the short term. And because we don't see immediate results, we often make decisions based on what feels good now instead of what benefits us later. This creates a dangerous pattern. You choose comfort today because the cost feels small. You delay effort because the reward feels far away. And over time, these small decisions quietly shape your habits, and your habits shape your life. What feels easy now often becomes difficult later. Another reason small actions are hard to value is because they don't feel impressive. We tend to celebrate big achievements, finishing a major project, reaching a big goal, achieving visible success. But we overlook the small, consistent steps that made those achievements possible. Reading a few pages doesn't feel like an accomplishment. Practicing for a short time doesn't feel significant. Making small progress doesn't feel exciting. But these are the exact actions that create long-term success. There's also a psychological challenge: lack of immediate feedback. When you don't see results, it's easy to feel like your effort doesn't matter. You might think, "What's the point?" and stop before the results have time to appear. But this is where understanding the process becomes important. Progress is often happening even when you can't see it. Your skills are improving. Your habits are forming. Your discipline is strengthening. Just because you don't see progress doesn't mean it's not happening. The key is to shift your focus. Instead of chasing immediate results, focus on consistency. Instead of asking, "What did I achieve today?" ask, "Did I take the right actions today?" When you start valuing the process, not just the outcome, you build momentum. Over time, those small, consistent actions begin to produce visible results. And when they do, it often feels sudden, like everything changed at once. But in reality, the change was happening all along. It was built quietly, day by day, through actions that once seemed too small to matter. Because in the end, the actions that are easiest to ignore are often the ones that matter the most. Building habits that stick. Small actions only create real change when they become consistent habits. Anyone can take action once. Anyone can feel motivated for a day or two. But lasting results don't come from what you do occasionally. They come from what you do repeatedly, almost automatically. That's what a habit is. A habit is an action you perform regularly without needing to think about it. It becomes part of your routine, part of your identity, and part of your daily life. The goal is not to force success, it's to make it automatic. But building habits that actually stick is where most people struggle. They start too big. They try to change everything at once. They rely on motivation, and when that motivation fades, the habit disappears with it. That's why the most effective way to build habits is to start small. Instead of trying to study for 3 hours, start with 20 or 30 minutes. Instead of trying to exercise intensely, start with a simple routine. Small habits are easier to begin, easier to repeat, and easier to maintain. And once they become consistent, you can gradually build on them. A small habit you stick to is more powerful than a big habit you quit. Another important principle is consistency over perfection. You don't need to do everything perfectly every day. What matters is showing up regularly. Missing one day doesn't ruin your progress, but quitting completely does. When you focus on consistency, you remove the pressure to be perfect. You allow yourself to keep going, even on days when your energy is low or your schedule is busy. Environment also plays a major role. Your environment can either support your habits or work against them. If your environment is full of distractions, it becomes harder to stay consistent. But if you design your environment to make good habits easier, you reduce resistance. For example, keep your study materials ready and visible. Remove distractions from your workspace. Set up your environment so the right action becomes the easy choice. Make good habits easy and bad habits difficult. Another effective strategy is to connect new habits to existing ones. This is often called habit stacking. For example, study right after you finish a meal. Read a few pages before going to sleep. Review notes after each class. By linking a new habit to something you already do, you make it easier to remember and maintain. Tracking your habits can also help. When you see your progress day by day, you become more motivated to continue. Even a simple checklist can create a sense of accountability and momentum. But perhaps the most powerful factor is identity. Instead of focusing only on what you want to achieve, focus on who you want to become. Don't just say, "I want to study more." Say, "I am someone who studies every day." When your habits align with your identity, they become more natural and more consistent. You don't just build habits, your habits build you. Over time, these small, repeated actions begin to shape your behavior. What once felt difficult becomes normal. What once required effort becomes automatic. And that's when real change happens, not through one big decision, but through habits that quietly shape your life every day. The role of discipline over motivation. Many people believe that success starts with motivation. They wait to feel inspired before they begin. They tell themselves, "I'll start when I feel ready," or "I just need more motivation." But the truth is, motivation is unreliable. Some days you feel driven and focused. Other days you feel tired, distracted, or unmotivated. If you depend only on motivation, your actions will be inconsistent, and inconsistent actions lead to inconsistent results. Motivation gets you started. Discipline keeps you going. Discipline is different. Discipline means taking action even when you don't feel like it. It's the ability to follow through on what matters, regardless of your mood. This is what makes discipline so powerful. It doesn't depend on how you feel. It depends on what you decide. For example, a motivated person might study for hours when they feel inspired, but skip days when they don't. A disciplined person studies consistently even on days when their energy is low. Over time, the disciplined person makes far more progress, not because they are more talented, but because they are more consistent. Success is not built on your best days, it's built on your consistent days. One of the biggest misconceptions is that discipline requires extreme effort or strong willpower all the time. In reality, discipline is often built through simple routines and small commitments. When you create a routine, studying at the same time each day, working in the same environment, following a clear plan, you reduce the need to make decisions. You don't ask yourself, "Do I feel like it?" You simply follow the routine. This turns discipline into a habit rather than a constant struggle. Another important idea is to lower the barrier to starting. On days when you feel unmotivated, don't aim for perfect performance. Aim to just begin. Even a small action, 5 or 10 minutes, keeps the habit alive. Showing up matters more than doing everything perfectly. Over time, this builds trust in yourself. You prove that you can follow through even when it's difficult, and that confidence becomes a powerful foundation for long-term growth. It's also important to understand that discipline creates freedom, not restriction. At first, discipline may feel limiting. It requires effort, structure, and consistency. but over time, it gives you more control over your life. You're no longer controlled by distractions, emotions, or temporary desires. Instead, you become someone who can choose what matters and act on it consistently. And that leads to better results in your studies, your work, your health, and your overall life. Because in the end, motivation may come and go, but discipline is what carries you forward day after day until small actions turn into meaningful success. Eliminating small negative habits. When people think about improving their lives, they often focus on adding new habits, studying more, exercising, working harder. But there's another side that's just as important and often overlooked: eliminating small negative habits. Because just like positive actions compound over time, negative habits do the same. The challenge is that most negative habits seem harmless in the moment. Scrolling your phone for a few extra minutes doesn't feel serious. Skipping one task doesn't feel like a big deal. Choosing comfort over effort just once feels easy to justify. But small negative habits don't stay small. They repeat and they grow. Over time, these small actions become patterns, and those patterns begin to shape your daily routine, your productivity, and your results. For example, losing 1 hour a day with distractions may not feel like much, but over a year, that's hundreds of hours, time that could have been used to learn, improve, or move closer to your goals. The same applies to other areas of life. Small delays turn into procrastination. Small excuses turn into missed opportunities. Small unhealthy choices turn into long-term problems. This is why eliminating negative habits is so powerful. It doesn't just remove problems, it creates space for better actions. The first step is awareness. You need to identify the habits that are quietly holding you back. Ask yourself, what do I do regularly that wastes my time or energy? What habits are slowing my progress? Often, these habits are automatic. You don't even notice them anymore. But once you become aware, you can start to change them. You can't fix what you don't notice. The next step is not to eliminate everything at once. That usually doesn't work. Instead, focus on reducing and replacing. For example, reduce time on distractions instead of trying to cut them completely. Replace a negative habit with a positive one. Instead of scrolling your phone for long periods, you might replace part of that time with reading or reviewing notes. This makes the transition more realistic and sustainable. Another effective strategy is to increase friction for bad habits, make them harder to access. Keep your phone out of reach while studying. Remove unnecessary apps or notifications. Change your environment so distractions are less available. What is easy to do becomes easy to repeat. By making negative habits less convenient, you naturally reduce how often they occur. At the same time, don't rely only on willpower. Willpower is limited, especially when you're tired or stressed. Instead, focus on creating systems and environments that support better choices. It's also important to be patient with yourself. Eliminating habits is not about being perfect. It's about making gradual progress. You may slip sometimes, but what matters is that you keep improving over time. Every time you reduce a negative habit, you regain time, energy, and focus, and that creates more room for positive actions to grow. Because in the end, success is not only about what you add to your life, it's also about what you remove. Tracking progress and staying consistent. One of the biggest challenges in building better habits is not starting, it's staying consistent. At the beginning, it's easy to feel motivated. You set goals, create a plan, and take action. But after a few days or weeks, that initial motivation fades. Life gets busy, distractions appear, and slowly, consistency starts to break. This is where tracking your progress becomes powerful. Tracking is a simple idea. You keep a record of the actions you take each day. It could be as basic as marking a check on a calendar, using a habit tracker app, or writing down what you've completed. At first, this might seem unnecessary, but it creates something important: awareness and accountability. What gets tracked gets improved. When you track your actions, you can clearly see whether you are staying consistent or not. Instead of guessing, you have real evidence of your behavior. This also creates a sense of progress. Even if the results are not visible yet, you can see that you are showing up every day, and that builds momentum. There's something powerful about seeing a chain of consistent actions day after day. You don't want to break that chain. It motivates you to continue, even when you don't feel like it. But tracking alone is not enough. You also need to understand what consistency really means. Consistency does not mean being perfect. It means showing up regularly, even if your effort is not at its best every time. Some days you will have high energy and perform well. Other days you will feel tired or distracted. The goal is not to perform perfectly every day. The goal is not to stop. It's better to do a little every day than to do nothing at all. Another important idea is to focus on process over results. Results take time. If you only focus on outcomes like grades, money, or big achievements, you might feel discouraged when progress is slow. But when you focus on the process, your daily actions, you stay in control. You measure success by effort and consistency, not just by results. For example, instead of focusing only on passing an exam, focus on daily study sessions. Instead of focusing only on big achievements, focus on completing your tasks. This shift keeps you motivated even when results are delayed. It's also helpful to review your progress regularly. At the end of each week, take a moment to reflect. What did I do well? Where did I struggle? What can I improve next week? This reflection helps you adjust your approach and stay on track. At the same time, be realistic. Life is not perfect, and there will be days when you miss your routine. That's normal. What matters is how quickly you return. Missing once is a mistake. Missing repeatedly becomes a habit. So, instead of being discouraged by setbacks, focus on getting back on track as soon as possible. Over time, tracking and consistency work together. Tracking keeps you aware. Consistency builds momentum, and momentum leads to progress. Because in the end, success is not about what you do once. It's about what you continue to do, day after day, even when it's not easy. The power of identity. Most people try to change their lives by focusing on outcomes. They set goals like getting better grades, earning more money, or becoming more productive. And while goals are important, they often miss something deeper: the role of identity. Identity is how you see yourself. It's the beliefs you hold about who you are. And whether you realize it or not, your actions are strongly influenced by that identity. You don't just act based on what you want. You act based on who you believe you are. For example, if you believe, "I'm not a disciplined person," you will naturally avoid actions that require discipline. If you believe, "I'm bad at studying," you may not even try to improve. On the other hand, if you see yourself as someone who is focused, consistent, and capable, your actions begin to reflect that belief. This is why identity is so powerful. It shapes your behavior from the inside out. The mistake many people make is trying to change their results without changing their identity. They focus only on what they want to achieve, not on who they need to become. But lasting change works in the opposite direction. Instead of starting with goals, start with identity. Ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be? What habits would that person have? For example, instead of "I want to get good grades," think "I am someone who studies consistently." Instead of "I want to be healthy," think "I am someone who takes care of my body." When your identity changes, your actions follow naturally. But how do you build a new identity? It starts with small actions. Every time you perform a positive habit, you are giving yourself evidence of who you are becoming. When you study, even for a short time, you reinforce the identity of being a disciplined student. When you choose focus over distraction, you strengthen the identity of being someone who takes control of their time. These actions may seem small, but they send a powerful message to your mind. This is who I am. Over time, as you repeat these actions, the identity becomes stronger. And once an identity is strong, it becomes easier to maintain the habits connected to it. Every action is a vote for the type of person you want to become. This also explains why change can feel difficult at first. When your actions don't match your current identity, there is resistance. But with repetition, that resistance fades and the new identity begins to feel natural. It's important to understand that identity is not built overnight. It is shaped gradually through consistent behavior. You don't need to prove it all at once. You just need to keep showing up. Because in the end, success is not just about achieving goals. It's about becoming the kind of person who can achieve them consistently. Patience and long-term thinking. In today's world, everything feels fast. People want quick results, instant success, and immediate rewards. We see highlight moments online and start believing that success happens overnight. But real life doesn't work that way. Real growth takes time, and one of the most important skills you can develop is patience combined with long-term thinking. What you build slowly lasts longer than what you build quickly. The problem is patience is difficult. When you start working on something, whether it's studying, building a skill, improving your habits, or changing your life, you don't see results immediately. At first, progress feels invisible. You put in effort, but nothing seems to change. And this is where most people quit. They assume nothing is happening because they can't see results yet. But underneath the surface, something important is always happening. Skills are improving. Habits are forming. Your thinking is becoming sharper. Your discipline is growing stronger. Even if you can't see it, progress is building slowly over time. Just because you don't see results doesn't mean nothing is happening. This is the essence of long-term thinking. It's the ability to trust the process even when immediate rewards are not visible. Long-term thinkers focus less on quick wins and more on sustainable growth. They understand that meaningful results are not created in days. They are created in months and years of consistent effort. For example, studying a little every day may not feel powerful in the moment, but over time it leads to deep understanding and confidence. Saving small amounts of money may not feel significant today, but over years it builds financial stability. Practicing a skill regularly may feel slow, but eventually it leads to mastery. Small actions repeated over time create big outcomes. The challenge is resisting the temptation of instant gratification. It's easy to choose what feels good now instead of what benefits you later, but short-term thinking often leads to long-term regret. Long-term thinking requires a shift in mindset. Instead of asking, "What do I get right now?" you start asking, "What will this lead to in the future?" This simple shift changes everything. It helps you make better decisions, stay more consistent, and avoid distractions that don't align with your goals. Another important part of patience is accepting slow progress. Growth is not always linear. Some days you improve quickly, other days it feels like nothing is changing. This is normal. The key is not to be discouraged by slow phases. Instead, understand that consistency matters more than speed. Progress is not always visible, but it is always happening when you stay consistent. Long-term thinking also helps you avoid burnout. When you stop chasing instant results, you reduce pressure on yourself. You begin to focus on steady improvement instead of unrealistic expectations. This creates a healthier, more sustainable approach to growth. It's also important to remember that every successful person you admire has gone through this same process. Behind every achievement is a long period of unseen effort, practice, repetition, failure, and persistence. What you see is the result. What you don't see is the patience it took to get there. In the end, patience is not about waiting passively. It's about continuing to act while trusting that your actions will pay off in time. And long-term thinking is what keeps you moving in the right direction even when progress feels slow. Because the truth is simple. The best results in life don't come quickly. They come from staying consistent long enough for small actions to become big outcomes. Environment shapes your actions. When people think about self-improvement, they usually focus on willpower. They believe success comes from trying harder, staying motivated, or forcing themselves to change. But there is something even more powerful that often gets ignored: your environment. Your environment includes everything around you: your room, your workspace, your phone, the people you interact with, and even the habits that are easy or difficult to access in your daily life. And whether you realize it or not, your environment is constantly shaping your behavior. You don't just choose your actions, your environment influences them first. For example, if your phone is always within reach, you are more likely to check it, even when you don't need to. If your workspace is messy, it becomes harder to focus. If distractions are always visible, your attention naturally drifts toward them. On the other hand, if your environment supports focus and discipline, your behavior improves almost automatically. This is why environment is often stronger than motivation. Motivation changes quickly, but your surroundings are always there, influencing your decisions in the background. One of the most important ideas to understand is this: make good actions easy and bad actions difficult. For example, if you want to study more, place your books where you can see them easily. If you want to reduce distractions, keep your phone away while working. If you want to exercise, prepare your clothes in advance so starting becomes easier. These small changes may seem simple, but they reduce friction. And when something is easier to start, you are far more likely to do it consistently. Your environment also includes the people around you. The people you spend time with influence your mindset, habits, and expectations. If you are surrounded by people who are focused and disciplined, you are more likely to adopt similar behaviors. If you are surrounded by distractions and negativity, it becomes harder to stay focused on your goals. Your environment silently teaches you what is normal. Another powerful concept is that your environment can either support your future or pull you away from it. If your surroundings are aligned with your goals, progress feels natural. But if your environment constantly pushes you toward distraction or comfort, even simple tasks become difficult. This is why small adjustments in your environment can lead to big changes in behavior. For example, a clean desk encourages focus. A quiet space improves concentration. Organized tools make tasks easier to start. Fewer distractions reduce mental fatigue. You don't always need more discipline, you often need a better setup. It's also important to understand that you don't have full control over every environment, but you can control parts of it. Even small adjustments can make a big difference over time. Another useful approach is to design your environment around your goals instead of relying on willpower. When your environment supports your desired behavior, you don't need to constantly fight against distractions or motivation drops. Discipline becomes easier when your environment is working with you, not against you. In the end, your actions are not just a result of your decisions, they're also a result of your surroundings. And when you start shaping your environment intentionally, you make it easier to build better habits, stay consistent, and move closer to your goals without constantly struggling. Because real change doesn't just come from trying harder, it comes from creating a space that naturally guides you toward better actions every day. Turning small actions into a better life. At this point, one idea should be very clear. Your life is not shaped by one big moment, but by many small actions repeated over time. But understanding this is not enough. The real question is, how do you turn this knowledge into a better life? The answer is simple but powerful. You start aligning your daily actions with the life you want to build. A better life is not created suddenly. It is built step by step. Many people focus on big goals. They think about where they want to be in the future, but they ignore what they do every day. And this creates a gap between intention and reality. You may want success, but your daily actions might not support it. You may want discipline, but your habits might reflect inconsistency. You may want progress, but your routine might stay the same. This is where transformation begins, with awareness of your small actions. Every day you make choices, how you spend your time, what you focus on, what you avoid, and what you repeat. These choices may feel minor, but they are constantly shaping your direction. The key is to bring intention into those small moments. Instead of acting automatically, start asking yourself, does this action move me closer to my goals? Is this helping me become the person I want to be? These questions may seem simple, but they slowly change how you think and behave. Another important step is focusing on consistency over intensity. Many people try to make big changes quickly, but they cannot maintain them. Real progress comes from small, sustainable actions repeated daily. For example, studying a little every day instead of cramming, exercising consistently instead of occasionally, improving skills step by step instead of all at once. Small actions, when repeated, become powerful systems. Over time, these systems shape your identity, your habits, and your results. But one of the most important parts of turning small actions into a better life is patience. You need to accept that progress is not always visible. There will be days when you feel like nothing is changing, but underneath the surface, your efforts are building something important. Skills are improving, discipline is strengthening, your mindset is shifting. Even if you can't see it yet, growth is happening. What feels small today becomes significant tomorrow. It's also important to stay flexible. Life will not always go according to plan. You may miss a day, lose focus, or fall out of routine. That's normal. What matters is not perfection, but recovery, how quickly you return to your path. Another key idea is awareness. You must regularly reflect on your actions. Ask yourself, am I improving or repeating the same patterns? Are my daily actions aligned with my long-term goals? This reflection helps you stay on track and adjust when needed. And finally, you must remember that change is not a single event, it is a process. You don't become a different person overnight, you become different through repetition. Every small action is a signal. It tells your mind who you are becoming. When you study consistently, you become someone who learns. When you stay disciplined, you become someone who is in control. When you keep improving, you become someone who grows. Your life is not built in big moments. It is built in small decisions repeated daily. So instead of waiting for a perfect opportunity or a big breakthrough, focus on what you can do today. Because in the end, a better life is not something you find later. It is something you create now, through small actions repeated every single day. Conclusion: the daily choices that shape your future. When you look at successful people, it's easy to focus on the results they achieved, the success, the progress, the visible achievements. But what you don't always see is what created those results in the first place. Daily choices. Not big moments, not lucky breaks, but small, repeated decisions made consistently over time. Your future is not shaped in one moment. It is shaped in many small moments repeated daily. Every day you are making choices. Some are intentional and some are automatic. You choose how you spend your time, what you focus on, what you avoid, and what you repeat. And even when these choices feel small, they are not neutral. They are always building something. They are either building progress or building problems. For example, choosing to focus for even a short period each day may not feel powerful in the moment, but over time it builds knowledge, discipline, and confidence. On the other hand, choosing distraction repeatedly may feel harmless, but it slowly reduces your focus, your energy, and your potential. Small choices don't stay small. They accumulate. The truth is, most people don't realize the power of their daily actions because the results are delayed. You don't see immediate consequences, so it's easy to ignore them. But just because the results are not visible right away doesn't mean they are not happening. They are building quietly in the background. This is why awareness is so important. When you begin to notice your daily choices, you gain the ability to change them. You stop living on autopilot and start living with intention. Instead of asking, "What do I feel like doing right now?" you start asking, "What choice will help my future self?" This small shift in thinking changes everything. Because your future self is not created by one big decision. It is created by thousands of small ones made today. You are constantly becoming someone through your daily actions. Another important realization is that consistency matters more than perfection. You don't need perfect days. You don't need perfect habits. You just need to keep showing up and making better choices over time. Even small improvements matter. Choosing focus once, choosing discipline once, choosing learning once. These actions may seem minor, but they send a message to yourself about who you are becoming. And over time, those messages shape your identity. There will be days when you make good choices and days when you don't. That's normal. What matters is the direction you are moving in, not perfection, but progress. Your life is shaped not by occasional effort, but by consistent direction. It's also important to understand that change is not immediate. You won't always see fast results from better decisions, but if you stay consistent, those decisions begin to compound. Small improvements stack on top of each other until one day the difference becomes clear. And by then, it often feels sudden, but it wasn't sudden at all. It was built quietly through daily choices. This is why your present moment matters so much. Not because it defines everything instantly, but because it is part of a long chain of decisions shaping your future. Every choice is a building block. Every action is a step in a direction. And over time, those steps create a path. So the real question is not just, what do I want in the future? The real question is, what am I choosing today? Because in the end, your future is not decided by one big moment. It is decided by the small daily choices you make again and again until they become your life.